You ask students to try to do a problem independently. 2.3 seconds later, a hand goes up. You go over to help, to give a hint. And the next thing you know, you've shown them the first 3 steps of the problem. Or you hold back and the student feels like you're not there to help them. It can feel like there's only 2 choices: help immediately or don't help at all. But those aren't the only options. By the end of this video, you'll have a way to help support student thinking without taking it over. You'll also understand when to step in, how to step in, and when to stop. Hi, I'm Michelle, founder of Thinking Math Corner and a full-time math teacher with over 20 years classroom experience. I help math teachers move students beyond memorized procedures by making intentional, thinking-focused instructional choices that are realistic within the pressures of an actual classroom, and to help teaching feel lighter for teachers. When a student says, "I don't know what to do," what's your first instinct? Is it to jump in and guide them all the way through? Is it to say, "Try yourself"? Those are 2 sides of the extreme. Most of us don't have only one answer to that question. We might do one thing in one situation, another thing with a different student, but it's important to understand your first instinct. To be clear, the goal is not to help less. It's to help make sure that the next decision to make is in the student's hands. One thing we talk about a lot in teaching is student independence. It's kind of like that holy grail. But we need to know that student independence isn't about doing it all by themselves. It means that they can begin, they can use things that they learned before, they can make connections, they can have a plan. It means that they can also recover from mistakes without the teacher supporting them every step of the way. Support itself is not the problem. It's when it replaces student thinking and takes over for student thinking that it becomes more debilitating than helpful. We've all seen examples of this in schools. Someone is scaffolding so much that the only person doing the learning is the teacher or the adult that's working with them. The students aren't having to think at all. That over support is done with the best of intentions. We never intend to sabotage student thinking. But if every pause results in the teacher coming to help, then students will have little motivation to do the thinking themselves. So here's an example. A teacher might ask, "What should we divide by first?" It sounds like a perfectly reasonable question, except that the decision of dividing has already been made by the teacher. So now the student doesn't need to decide what operation, what action needs to take place. They're just deciding on a number. A more useful prompt might be, "What are you trying to end up with?" Or "What are you trying to isolate?" That leaves the decision up to the student. They need to make a choice about what needs to happen. One way I like to think about helpful support is that it brings the students closer to making a decision, not closer to the answer. Now, I know you're probably asking, but what does that actually look like in a classroom? And what it looks like is providing the minimum levels of support needed for a student to be successful in decision making. One way to think about this is with a support ladder. There are 6 steps to the support ladder, and they get increasingly more intensive. The first step is wait and observe. Just because a student is pausing doesn't mean they're not thinking. Second step, ask a thinking question. It doesn't directly tell them what to do. It doesn't make the decision for them, but it does get them prompted to do some thinking. Third step, point to a useful resource or a representation. Maybe suggest, "I wonder if we could use algebra tiles to figure that out." Fourth is narrow the choice. Sometimes choice is a wonderful thing for students, and sometimes it actually becomes debilitating and they freeze. So narrowing that choice can help out. Fifth step on the ladder is providing one piece of information. And that's kind of like a jump starting the car idea. You're giving them that one piece of information. So maybe it's determining whether we're talking about surface area or volume in a question. And then the last step is modeling the smallest necessary part. It's actually pretty rare that you would have to climb the whole ladder. Most of the times you're on the first or second, third rung of the ladder, but you want to focus on doing the smallest amount of support necessary for a student to feel supported and successful. So let's look at an example. Let's say a student is stuck on a word problem. Instead of saying, multiply the rate by the number of hours, maybe we ask, which quantities are changing together? Which ones depend on the other? If that's not enough, maybe you point to a previous example. Oh, that's like that train problem that we did. If the student is still stuck, maybe it's saying, would a diagram or a table help more? Where we're narrowing the choices, students are having to make a decision in any case. The support ladder works with students, but it only works if we're consistent and if students know how to handle the support, how to use the support before frustration takes over. This is where routines come into play. Routines like, where do I access manipulatives and models? How do I find a solution? Where are materials I can use? What do I try before getting help? And most especially, how do I explain where I am stuck? I don't get it doesn't help. I will often say to students, I don't get it doesn't help me. Talk me through it and tell me exactly where you get stuck. Is it right at the beginning? Do you understand the context? Or is it further on? But knowing how to explain where they got stuck so that they can get specific help is really important. Remember that a scaffold is only temporary if someone removes it. So when we talk about support, it should be only as much as is needed. And that means working back away from it when we've gotten there. So let's say they needed use a table. Well, eventually we want them to get to the point that we can prompt them with which representation would help. How could you show that in your work? Support should shift responsibility. It shouldn't be a permanent replacement. So I may take on a little bit more for a student at one time, but the goal is always for the student to have the responsibility for the thinking, for the decision making, and for the work. In essence, we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. So then the question becomes, how do I know that students are working independently? Well, if you're watching, you can see students starting the task without help. You can see students making an effort before they ever seek out help. They might make a wrong turn and then regroup and restart, or they might get support from you and then continue on their way. All of those are indicators that students are working independently. One of the things we can do as teachers to support this independence is by asking thinking questions. In the free 3 Thinking Triggers guide, I list those 3 key questioning techniques that automatically provoke thinking. This guide is linked in the description below. So if we know how to support thinking without taking over, how do we know if a student is sitting there waiting or thinking? That's what the video on the screen will help you figure out.